In the video posted above, there is a fella playing a game with his friends, and they are playing Starship Troopers. And these insectoids killed most of his team, and he was the medic of the team. So he was able to get himself some power ups and med kits and just start running around the battlefield like a crazed maniac, slowly but surely getting his people back up and running so they can get to the drop ship. And it's quite an amazing video. But when you play a game enough, you start to figure out the little nuances and exploits of the game, and it's very, very fun to see that he actually is successful in that, and he saves so many people. So in this little short story, I'm going to be explaining to you guys how Edinstvo also did something very similar to that. He's done this on multiple occasions, but one of the occasions happened earlier in his astralic reign, after he was the Unity Wolf, who then got upgraded to the Astral Wolf, who has like a quadruped hexapodal Unity Wolf form, Astral Wolf. So, yeah. Edinstvo once did something very similar to this. He was fighting a large-scale war on a planet, and he realized that he had a lot of wounded men and women that would have died if he would have not gone to them. So, because of his large wolf form, he was able to carry around 30 max-level medical center kits on his body. So, sprouting a specialized exoskeleton that forms around his body, he quickly ran through the battlefield, taking multiple cannon rounds to his body and mines to his legs. Because of his specialized armor, it did very little to him. He was knocked down a couple times because of the blasts, but he got back up pretty quickly. So, running around the battlefield while returning heavy fire back to the enemy because of his back-mounted cannon, he was able to provide cover fire while administering first aid to his people. Remember, Edinstvo, ever since he started being part of the Astral Empire, originally called the Unity Empire, originally called the Oxfube Empire, well, I think it was Unity Oxfube, Unity Astral. The Empire kind of went through a couple phases, but pretty much during his different technological advancements, he has always been able to hold weaponry on his back when he, morphs into his wolf form. So, you guys know how that kind of weird panther cat creature from Revenge of the Fallen Transformers movie was infiltrating the military base, and it had cannons on his back. Pretty much that's what the Astral Wolf does. This is a prime example of the kind of like cannon that would be used on Edinstvo's back when he was his giant wolf form, which stood at around 9 feet tall and was a couple thousand pounds of just pure muscle. Edinstvo would be able to hold these powerful cannons on his body and be able to fire back at the enemy even while running at full speed and even flipping through the air. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty awesome because he not only was able to get medical kits to his team, but he was also able to keep firing his weapons back at the enemy. And because Astral Tech and soon Astralic Dark Tech is so advanced, every single shell that he fires automatically hones in on the enemy's life source. It's called a life source tracking system. So it uses kind of almost a supernatural power to find where the enemy is and pretty much influence the bullet's trajectory toward it. Even if the bullet itself is even if the bullet itself is not, guidable, it will still be influenced in its movement because of that kind of power hidden inside of the technology. So running around the battlefield while returning heavy fire back to the enemy because of his back-mounted cannon, he was able to provide cover fire while administering first aid to his people. One of the weird things about Edinstvo, because of his polymorphic abilities, he can go from bipedal all the way to a quadruped, and very soon a hexapod, which allows him much more sturdiness in the battlefield. On top of that, because he may soon inherit a Titan Tar form, he will not only be able to use handheld weaponry, but he will also be able to use massive cannons linked to his body on the rest of his body. So that means he will be able to fire a multitude of weapons at the same time because he will have pretty much an extra body. And remember that story I showed you guys the other day on Spin Short Stories about the Tar core of the Astral Empire. Remember how that like one female had just like freaking tree trunk legs and was just like like built like a freaking tank. That like red and white one that was walking through the rain with the umbrella. Pretty much that's what Edinstvo's form is going to look like. Just pretty much this big, bulky, like pure muscle mass tar form that is just like built just big, broad, and heavy duty, like like a polar bear. Polar bears can reach up to a pretty high speed if they they need to. So they're scary. But anyway, he ran around the battlefield laying down heavy cover fire while he got the medical kits to the appropriate individuals who needed assistance. And he used the tentacles in his body and extra appendages to administer first aid. It is said that quite recently he has been able to start sprouting like, small little tiny grabber arms. So like, they're like half developed arms, so it's like a thinner three-pronged hand arm thing. So it still allows him extra, you know, ability to be able to manipulate objects with his body while his main arms do their own thing. Because he has been alive for so long, he knows how to do every single medical thing possible in the handbook and on the battlefield. He also knows how to be a lawyer. He is able to represent himself or others because of his influence as well as his incredible mental capabilities. On top of that, he is also the best leader of the Empire because of the experience and what he has seen that others do not. He has lived through about 4 or 5 generations of the astrolic people, who live on average 200 or 300 years. So, yeah, that is he has lived long enough to see patterns and to help lead the Empire away from those bad patterns and keep the Empire on the good patterns. So, this makes him the perfect soldier due to his wide range of abilities. On top of that, he is ranked one of the highest scorers on diplomacy and is continuing to improve his diplomatic skills so that way he can better represent the Empire. Doesn't mean he's going to be nice to you, but at least he will be able to be a little bit more approachable. In fact, the enemy that he was fighting against was in awe of his quick actions to save his people. They thought that he would retreat because he was the leader, and the leader needs to stay alive to lead his people. But that is not what Edinstvo did. He ferociously threw himself head-on into the enemy fire and stood like an imposing fortress protecting his people and jumping from one location to another, administering first aid and saving the lives of many that day. When the battle ended, multiple enemies came forward to surrender despite having the Astral Empire's forces incredibly outnumbered and outgunned. Unfortunately, in this situation, this was a more lightly armed party that Edinstvo was with, and they soon were caught in an ambush and were quickly surrounded on all sides. In fact, to this day, those that defected or surrendered were given supplementary ranks in their planet's military, and also of some of the militaries of the Astral Empire, because of their willingness to turn for the better. So you will actually see certain individuals from this planet being part of the Astral Empire's military, uh, because they realized what was going on. Seeing how Edinstvo threw himself into the face of death and held the line to protect his people, even taking entire salvos to his own body, won him massive respect to the enemy forces, which is why some of them turned themselves over to him. This enemy was known to be very Warhammer 40k-ish when it comes to their own people. They were supposed to be expendable and weren't very much treated very well. In fact, a lot of them were expected to die or to be cannon fodder instead of actually being taken care of. So the way that the Great Wolf protected his people and worked on saving their lives and holding the line until help would arrive really made them start to think and want that for their own people. In fact, after that enemy planet's military was thoroughly routed and destroyed, the surviving factions of that military turned themselves over and surrendered as an act of goodwill and hoped to better their people as a whole. In fact, 2/3 of the way through the war, even that planet's own military, most of it turned against their own leadership in support of Edinstvo as a return for keeping their families safe and protected. Edinstvo, at any whim, could order the planet being glassed from up above. He doesn't ever use the planet-destroying technology, like, the TRX-350 Astronova Bomba, if he can help it. But if he does have to, he can turn that own planet into a shrapnel bomb and cause devastation in an entire solar system. Yeah, so as an act of, hopefully goodwill and to appease the Edinstvo, they quickly surrendered and, turned against their own planet to hopefully save their families. To this day, this planet has been liberated, and all evil on it has been destroyed with the utmost prejudice. Now they are actually part of the unified planetary systems of the Astrolic Empire's ally, or UPCA. This is a special empire that is made out of planetary powers that do not own a multi-planet system, but still own their own planet, and that allows them to all work together as one, as its own empire, and as its own ally to the Astral Empire. But yes, due to the courageous actions of the Astral Wolf and how hard he worked to protect his men and women and put himself in the line of fire, won him great respect throughout multiple planetary systems. And these multiple planetary systems were various skirmishes and campaigns that Edinstvo ordered the Astral Empire to be a part of. So, Edinstvo sees, sitting on the back lines as weak. And, this is something that one of his very old bosses, when he was still human, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, or technically 600, 700 years ago for him, would say, I wouldn't have you do something that I wouldn't do. And that stuck with Edinstvo throughout his entire lifetime of multiple rebirths. So he wanted to do his best to lead by example. And often, because of his own actions, he has spurred forward his own military on multiple occasions. He's thrown himself at death's door, pummeling the enemy with his weaponry, taking down entire swaths of an enemy army by himself, just to show that if I can do it, you can do it too. Now, mind you, Edinstvo is overpowered beyond all belief, and his armor is able to take pretty much anything and everything that's thrown at it. But, it's just like, even being outgunned, Edinstvo is able to outlast the enemy, and that's one of the things that the Astral Empire is very well known for, is even if you have bigger and scarier weapons than we do, we have bigger and better armor than you do, so good luck getting through. And, so pretty much The Astro Empire has two middle fingers. One, we have really strong weaponry, but even if you're better in weaponry status, we are better in, you know, in our defensive aspect. So, middle finger for you as well. And that's a funny thing. The Astro Empire has multiple trump cards up their sleeves. So, even it's like, haha, I beat you in this. And then suddenly Astro Empire is like, haha, we beat you in these other five categories. And it's like, oh crap. So, yeah, Edinstvo always makes sure that his people are given the best. But in return, he makes sure to expect the best from his own people, which is sometimes why some of the laws do seem draconian to human standards. But for individuals who have lived their entire lives, or most of their lives, in the Astro Empire, it's completely understandable, and it's just, their everyday life. It's just like, that's fine, you know. So, yeah, the Astro Empire seems very militant, and it is, but it's built around the betterment of its people through hard work, hard labor, and good reward for it. So products are made to last. Um, Food is, genuine and good. The Astro Empire inhabitants choose to work with nature. So there's never nature taking back what was lost, but instead, the Astro Empire inhabitants working with nature to make beautiful homes for themselves. And yes, you will definitely see a lot of, smaller metropolises and small cities and towns and villages and stuff like that. But you will also see, you know, um, houses that incorporate trees to help, fill in a wall, or you'll see houses built completely into a tree and then support structures to help keep the structural integrity of the tree together. You'll see, really cool things like that. But, yeah, Edinstvo works very hard day and night, putting his own sanity at risk, to make sure the betterment of this people is at hand. So, like I said, considering the fact that he is going to be making his home pretty much on the Tar planet or the Space Wolf planet, depending on what happens, you know, that is going to be, awkward for him to step back from the major skirmishes. Like, he will still be ready to go in case a big monumental enemy, uh, you know, comes into play. But for the smaller skirmishes that he can usually just backhand across the galaxy, he's going to try to let more of his own military handle it instead of just himself. And that will not only give his own military more experience, but that will also allow Edinstvo a bit more free time. Because since his planet will be sort of in the center of the Empire, in a special secluded zone, if he ever needs to jump to a certain location, there are tons of warp gates and space lanes that he's able to fire singularity charges into and get to that other location within a minute or even a couple minutes. So if there's ever a dark empire incursion or something evil or scary coming their way that is bigger than normal, then a Dinsfo can quickly jump into that. And so he's going to try to cut down his time by a third that he spends on the ship. Um, and Sufti is very much appreciative of that fact, and she appreciates that, he is trying to live a somewhat more normal life. Because, like I said, she's been with him for, you know, almost 400 years, and, for 400 years, all she's known of Edenstville is, wartime. Always be ready for war, always be ready for battle, because there's a lot of very evil people and empires out there. So, you know, so she finally was able to convince him to, like, maybe try a more laid back approach to things and try to be a bit more, at home. So the best way to protect the empire while still having a home is to be in the center, because that means he can jump to any location whatsoever with equal response time, so that no matter what happens, he will always be prepared. But yeah, this is just one of the few stories that just goes to show just how incredible Edinstvo is when it comes to the battlefield, and just how much and how far he will go to take care of his people. And remember, this was a very wide area that he was fighting against, and his people were kind of entrenched in the ground, trying to keep themselves alive until more people were able to come to extract them. So a dense foe was running back and forth at incredible speeds, like clocking in at over 100 miles an hour, pushing his body to the limit, to get medical kits and first aid and gunfire support to his people. And the fact that he was taking in that much gunfire to his own body while returning such a heavy bombardment toward the enemy. And like these were like subnuclear shells. Like these shells were like equivalent to that of a 16-inch battleship cannon, 16-inch battleship cannon shell. Edinstvo fires massive weaponry, and even though his own cannon is not a 16-inch, it still has the firing power of a 16-inch just because of how overpowered Astrotech is. So just firing a small salvo of those rounds from his own back-mounted cannon, he was able to cause the enemy to have to relocate, and that would buy his people some time before a new charge from the enemy would come. So because of Edinstvo's quick actions and persistent pushing against the enemy, he was able to keep his people alive and suffer very few casualties considering the circumstances. So yeah, just wanted you guys to know of this cool story and all the stuff that Edinstvo does to make the Astral Empire what it is, and how much he cares about and loves his people. And yeah, don't you worry, guys. He's still still going to be that awesome bad butt fighting character. He's still going to be the awesome warlord that's going to crush any enemies that try to threaten his people. But he's going to try to take a little bit more of a personal time as well from here on out to try to form at least somewhat of a simple life. And like it is, since he's on the tar planet, he won't be swamped with people trying to be like, hey, autograph, hey, this, hey, that. And second of all, this will also give him a more of a chance to actually be around and in the Empire. Because remember, most of the time he spends is outside the Empire or on the outskirts. So with him actually spending more time on the inside of the Empire, people will get to know him better and, be able to relate to him better and feel him better, and be able to have a more personable relationship with them. So Edinstvo is doing this because he thinks that this might be the best route to take for at least a little while. And then if wartime comes back and scary and evil things come back, he will always be ready. And because he has, those special flash body drives, those astral pouches, if he ever grows rusty in a single area, he can flash memory that back into his body, and that will give him an immediate refresher of what, that area is that he grew rusty in, and he will be back and ready to that, up to snuff, up to top tier within seconds, and he will be ready to go. But yeah, anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of Edinstvo's heroics and, showing what a good fighting leader is. And, yeah, I will be releasing more stuff as time goes on. You guys stay awesome, and always remember, God bless.